So welcome back to another modules update and feedback session. I will share my screen because unlike previous updates, we're not doing slides this time. We're going to be driven purely based on what we've published on GitHub. And you can see that I'm on a different profile precisely so that I can show everybody what they should be able to see, just to double check that we're not making anything private by mistake. So in the last 2 weeks since our last update call on the 22nd, I think it was, we did Alpha 4, which had quite a lot of changes, mainly that QLoad now supports loading Q modules and also fetching them. And we also added some examples to QLoad and a couple of other fixes. And then Alpha 5 had a few changes, but the main one is that qmod_get is now a command to update a specific dependency or add a specific dependency. Now, there's also the releases project, which you can find from QLang. So if I was to go to QLang and go to projects here, there it is, release 0.8. And there's a bunch of views here. The one that we use most often is upcoming releases. So you can think of these as sort of milestones, except that we use columns within this single project. It helps keep things a bit more tidy. And I can move things, for example, between releases without having to change milestones or lose track of items. So we plan to do a few things for the first and only release candidate next Tuesday. So these are all the items we're planning for the next few days. You can see there's nothing particularly big in here, but it's all stuff that will help us for the release, such as, for example, having debug logging for fetching modules will be really useful when people report issues with their own OCR registries. So they can just share those logs with us, and then we can debug and see what's going on. There's also a view for all releases. So in the releases page that I showed earlier, you can see a summary of what went into each release. But then in here, you can have a bit more detail about all the particular bugs or feature requests that we fixed. And the last thing that I will show is that we also have a modules roadmap project that we've shown before in other calls. And I have been toying, after Paul suggested it, with a new view called last closed. And it shows the items that we closed in the last 2 weeks. And the reason we chose 2 weeks is because these update calls are every 2 weeks, right? So if we want to get an idea of what did we accomplish since the last modules call in terms of modules, it's quite literally, it should be the list of these issues. Whoops. So for example, Roger and I were talking earlier about, we made a decision on what to do with selecting default major versions in modules. And that is this issue here. So you can find issues that we solved recently quite quickly. So I don't think we're going to spend a ton of time going through every single one of these issues, but I'll shut up now and I'll see if Paul or Richard want to talk about any particular issue or question or feedback.
I don't think Paul will talk about anything right now, given that he's not here.
I was not a pilot.
But I was speaking instead. So, I mean, there's not a huge amount to talk about. So we've got a bunch of stuff done. What I'm working on at the moment is the HTTP logging, which is surprisingly tricky, actually, because to get it right, we want, as Daniel said, we want to be able to have something where people can copy and paste logs, and that means you want to be careful not to include sensitive data in those logs, which is actually not that straightforward, but I'm using some prior art from other projects to have a reasonably good heuristic as to what might be sensitive or not. Anyway, that should land very soon. I mean, apart from that, Richard, you know what the crack is.
Yeah, I had a question. I was wondering if you had any idea about the timeline for being able to push things like the Kubernetes generated modules into a repo. It could be something that is very hacky that I could just push into it so I can try out what would happen if that sort of package existed in a repository. I think that is kind of the main blocker for me using modules right now, because I still have to vendor the generated modules.
So that is absolutely first on agenda after 0.8 release, I'd say. So that's very much front first and foremost in our agenda. Because there's a bunch of design decisions to go about that, like how do you do it. So yeah, progress real soon, but that is not, we're not planning to get that done before 0.8 because we honestly haven't got the time.
In fact, it might be a good idea to have think about an agenda item for the next update call to talk about what we're thinking.
Yeah.
For that use case. But yes, this week and probably next, it's definitely still 0.8, just because we want to get it out of the door and polish the last few bits.
That said, when if we find ourselves in a position that that we've got everything done for 0.8 before that time, then that's basically the next thing that I'm moving on to.
Yeah, in fact, Roger and I are trying to finish everything this week, just so that next week, ideally, it's just a matter of doing the releases, but no last-minute bugs, because
Yeah.
there never are any bugs, and then we can just move on to the next items.
Sounds great. Yeah, super excited about everything that you're doing, not just in the modules world. So.
Cool. Thank you for your support, and thank you for all the changes, all the checks, that all the real world testing you've made. Was it you, Richard, that were using GitLab?
No,
It was someone else. Yeah.
Yeah,
but just like any experience with real world registries, because I know there are loads of implementations. They all have their own quirks, and our client is done from scratch, so there are bound to be hiccups here and there.
Yeah, I'm working on upgrading our Artifactory. That's the OCI repository that we use over here. So hopefully I can give that a spin once we get that upgraded.
So have you tried using that? Have you tried uploading to that, or?
We're on an old version that hasn't been upgraded to support OCI generic repositories. So
Right.
I'm not able to test that quite yet.
Okay. And when you say generic repositories, what do you mean?
They have the concept of like Docker repositories. So OCI images of specific types, they have the concept of a more generic type for some reason that's separate from Docker, and they made that accessible in a later version of their software.
Okay, because we do theoretically the actual media type of our images is actually the original Docker media type. So
really, okay, so maybe I don't need to upgrade. I will try out with the Docker media type then.
I would like that would be great if you could try that, because we should be compatible. We use an artifact type, which is basically the media type, which is defined somewhat weirdly as the media type of the config file. But that's how the distribution defines it. But the actual media type of the actual manifest should be Docker image or whatever. So I can't remember what the actual thing is. So yeah, give it a bash, and because it should work theoretically.
Okay. Nice. That'll save me an upgrade.
That'd be great. And also, like in the end, I think we'll probably have a matrix of compatibility and that sort of thing with respect to different artifact registry implementations, and any entries in that are really gratefully received. So if you do get it working, then let us know, and let us know which version of Artifactory you are using, that sort of thing. That would be really super useful.
Yeah, we'll do. Definitely.
Thank you. Did you have any other questions?
Not specifically to modules. But yeah, I don't have any more questions specific to modules.
Okay, then I think maybe we can end it here and keep it short and give you all back some time.